Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. Well, every week on Power of Attorney, we ask you to send in questions through Facebook, through Twitter, and also email. And every week you deliver with great questions. So we're going to get to your questions for our guest today, Attorney Jack Jernigan. And of course, we were talking about debt collection. And right before I go to our first question, we were talking about the form letters that will be made available on the website. But we want to be clear that those letters are not going to wipe away your debt. We want people to be very, very clear about that.
The debt does not go away.
It does not go away.
Be aware of that. If you ask them not to contact you, often what you may find out next is you'll get served with a lawsuit from a lawyer. So the debt does not go away just by sending them this letter.
Yeah.
Or just to clear up, you can ask them not to contact you except in writing, and that way, if they send you harassing letters, it's right there in black and white, and you have the proof that they've been harassing you. So they're going to behave themselves if they put it in writing and send it to you and say, please pay these bills.
Exactly.
Yeah, very important to
So
put everything,
keep the lines of communication.
in writing.
Sorry, you can keep the lines of communication open, but you don't have to be subjected to relentless phone calls, emails, or however else they might try to contact you or contacting you at work. If you say, send it to me via email or send it to my home address or whatever.
Right, and that's often the best road to go, is say, don't contact me by phone, please communicate with me in writing.
Okay, so we started off the show talking about the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, and our first question says, does that act cover debt that's owed to the IRS? How can I deal with the IRS if I feel they're treating me unfairly?
Unfortunately, it does not apply to the IRS, but typically people are not going to be harassed in the same way by the IRS. They're not going to be subject to
Unless
repeated...
you're Tea Party, if you've been following the news lately.
Good point.
So it does not cover the IRS?
It does not.
It does not, okay. Here's an interesting question. Can a debt collector come to my house?
They can, as long as they don't harass you, threaten you, lie to you. Typically, you don't see that happening very often, though. But certainly, in fact, I've never encountered it where a debt collector has come to a house and knocked on the door. It's just not something they
probably
do.
don't want to get punched in the nose.
Yes.
So, Jack, at what point would someone come to you?
Typically, they'll come to me when, for some reason, they can't afford to pay the debt, or they don't owe the debt. And that's another thing. Is
very important.
Is if a collector contacts you and you don't feel you owe the debt, you can send them a letter, and in that letter where you say, don't contact me, say, please validate this debt. And they're required to send you proof that you do owe the debt. And that is not uncommon.
Right, and we'll have that on the website, but you get to a very good point. Sometimes they not only try to overcharge you or mistreat you, they might be trying to collect on a debt that is no longer legally enforceable. And maybe when you've paid that they don't have it, they don't show it paid, but we're talking about where the statute of limitations, or in Louisiana as we call it, the prescription has run, and the company's trying to make you pay a debt that's too old for them to sue you over.
And that is clearly violated by the Act.
It happens all the time.
It
I've
does.
seen it too
So
many
talk
times.
a little bit about the statute of limitations when it comes to debt.
It's different in each state. In Louisiana, they only have 3 years to collect on a debt from the date of the last time you made a payment or the date you took out the loan or the credit card debt.
And that's most debts. That's credit card bills, right?
Yes.
Or from the last date you made a payment on it, correct?
Right.
Health bills, medical bills.
Medical bills, that's
a big deal.
That's a
of
big
people.
problem,
huge.
and they only have 3 years to collect those.
If you just owe somebody money on a promissory note, is that the same thing?
That is not the same thing.
Because those people are not debt collectors.
Right.
Okay. I want to be clear about that.
All right. Okay, here's another question. A collection agency keeps calling me, insisting I owe on an account that I already paid off. I asked that they send me a letter proving what I owe, and they refused. What can I do? I don't want them to sue me.
In that situation, they typically won't sue you, but I've seen it happen, and you can, as we talked about before, say, prove that I owe this debt, and if you have, keep good documents, because you send them a canceled check showing that you paid the debt off and saying, prove that I owe this debt.
Yeah.
Right. If that caller only asked them over the phone, they're going to pretend like that call never happened. if this questioner asked them to do it in writing and hopefully send it certified, and then they didn't comply, they can be in real trouble. And that's when lawyers such as yourself, who help people in that situation, can go after them for penalties and attorney's fees.
Definitely, and it does happen.
Yeah, and I think it's so important. I think this points to the fact that it's so important that you do keep your records, because even if you have paid off a debt, it doesn't mean that you may not be contacted by these debt collectors. It does happen.
It happens a lot.
Yeah, and what if I have several, you know, issues out there and I need to consolidate my debt, and there are, you know, lots of ads out there. We've seen lots of companies that talk about debt consolidation. Good idea, bad idea? What do you say?
I am not in favor of these debt consolidation companies. They charge very high upfront fees. They sometimes don't negotiate with all your creditors or don't cut deals with all your creditors. They're sometimes agencies of the credit card companies themselves. It's just a bad idea all the way around. I've rarely seen people cut these deals, and they can cut deals, say 60, 70% on the dollar, but it's hard to make those payments every month, and if you don't, then you're right back where you started, except you owe more.
Right. In other words, you could wipe out whatever deal you thought you had by failing to keep your monthly payments, correct?
Exactly.
But debt collection lawyers such as yourself, many, such as you, actually help people try and negotiate when you have a lot of debt to consolidate, correct?
We do, and many of these collection agencies know me. They know that I'm also a bankruptcy lawyer, so we can send a letter and offer to settle for a very low amount on the dollar, and often we're successful.
But what about Jane Doe and John Doe out there? They don't know me.
Right.
So how do I go about this process of negotiating with the credit card companies or with the person who I owe the money to?
When you first start getting called by a collection agency, that is when you're in the best position to settle, if you can, and if you owe the debt. If you have access to a little money, you can offer them a very low percentage on the dollar. They may come back
A lump sum settlement.
A lump sum settlement. Yeah, they don't like monthly payments. They love lump sum settlements.
Just give them a chunk of money all at once, and then everybody's finished with each other.
Yes, but make sure everything is in writing. Do not send any money until you get something very good in writing saying this is going to totally settle my debt.
And if it's a lot of money, please use your common sense. Contact a lawyer. You know, even if that lawyer charges you a little money, just to make sure you're not going to end up paying a lot of money and then they're going to back out of the deal and say you owe more.
Right. And another thing to be wary of is if you're trying to settle the debt with them, they love to get your bank account information. Never give them
Not a good idea.
No. You can send them a check every month if you want, but once they get your bank account information, it puts you in a very bad position.
Yeah. So
They'll try and auto-deduct money from your account and say they had permission to, for example.
They will.
When really you never gave them that permission.
Right.
So rather than give them the key to that account, or the key to open the door to that account, don't give them that.
Right, and you don't have to.
Well, what about this whole idea of garnishing wages? And we know that that's a tactic that's often used, that they'll start garnishing your wages immediately, or they threaten it. Yes.
They threaten you with that, and/or criminal prosecution. That's a different thing. But the wage garnishment, they will tell you, or certainly strongly imply, that we're going to come garnish your wages next week. This happens all the time. That's a common tactic, and that is simply not true. It's illegal for them to tell you that because it's a lie, and they certainly cannot do it. And if a debt collector is calling you, they are typically at least 6 months away from garnishing your wages. There are just a number of steps they have to go through before that can happen.
And so just to be very clear, though, we're not saying they can't garnish your wages. That they can do, but they can't do it immediately. It can't happen next week or tomorrow.
Absolutely not.
That's because before you can garnish anybody's wages, what these creditors have to do, these debt collectors have to do, is they have to file a lawsuit. They have to win the lawsuit, and then they have to take steps to have someone through the court system enforce the collection of the judgment, including by garnishing wages, correct?
Right.
And that takes a long time.
Yeah, and you know when it's coming because you have to be served with a copy of that lawsuit before they can even get a judgment.
Yeah. Now, there are some benefits that they can't touch, right?
There are. The most common benefits that they cannot touch are Social Security benefits. They cannot garnish those wages. Those are exempt from seizure by any creditor. Veterans benefits, military pay are other examples, and these are the most common examples of pay that is exempt from seizure, exempt from garnishment.
Yeah. Well, I know you're not big on debt consolidation. I know you're not big on payday loans.
Oh.
That's a big topic, and actually we are going to talk about payday loans, but right now, believe it or not, that's all the time we have for this show. But this is such a huge topic. Of course, we have part 2 that's coming up, where we'll talk about mortgage modifications, payday loans, so much more to get into. So you game to stick around for that?
I look forward to seeing you again.
Fantastic.
All right, fantastic.
Thanks to Attorney Jack Jernigan for being with us on John Redmann Power of Attorney, and thanks to all of you for supporting the show. Remember, you can go online to johnredmannpoa.com or jrpoa.com to get more information about everything we've discussed here today, to get those forms, and you can also watch other episodes of the show right there on that same website. Thanks again, and we will see you next time on John Redmann Power of Attorney.